Before I begin this video essay, if you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe now and be sure to hit the bell icon so you can be notified when a new video drops. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. Also, be sure to give the video a like. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, white supremacy is a team sport. And so is black empowerment. I've told you that for over a decade now, and it's as true today as it's ever been. As you can see from the images and headline of this video, there are two heroes who have come out of this whole mess regarding the murder of Breonna Taylor. There are two heroes who have emerged. The first, of course, is Kenneth Walker, the young man who defended her life and who also defended his own. And the second is the Honorable Judge Olu Stevens. Both of these men are already targets of white supremacy, so we need to make it very clear that we're not going to be tolerating anyone calling themselves targeting these men. See, white supremacy hates taking an L, and they took a big one with this one. It was bad enough that the bastards had to back down, but to have to back down on something like this in front of everyone, oh, you know they're seething right now and deciding, is there anything we can do outside the court? You know they're sitting around going, those niggers, we ain't gonna let these niggers start thinking that white supremacy can't do anything it wants to them at any time. We gotta push back against this. We gotta get something going. We gotta push back hard against this. Except right now, they don't have any good options. But before we go getting carried away, I think it best to keep things in their proper context. Kenneth Walker is not necessarily a free man, though. The DA has clearly telegraphed to everyone that his dismissal of the charges is only temporary. He said it's dismissed without prejudice. For those of you who don't know, in legal terms, if you dismiss charges with prejudice, that means prejudgment. So that you cannot bring it up in the future. That's what prejudice means. You're going to be prejudiced against these charges in the future if someone tries to bring it up. If it's dismissed without prejudice, you're saying, well, we can bring this up anytime we get ready to. And the DA's already made it clear, well, the grand jury, I'm going to say that I'm pulling back the charges because the grand jury didn't have all the information, which is exactly what Kenneth Walker's attorney said. Said, no, you guys got caught. We got you. But the DA's also made it clear that when there's new information, depending on how the investigation goes, in other words, as soon as all these cameras go away and all this attention that we've brought on ourselves goes away, as soon as we don't have so many eyes on us, then all of a sudden, well, there's been some new evidence. What's the new evidence? Not so many people are watching. That's new evidence. So this Kenneth Walker guy, we're going to get your ass now, nigger. That's what the DA's up to. And by the way, just for the record, the judge who signed off on that illegal no-knock warrant, her name's Mary Shaw. And this woman has a long-standing record of signing off on questionable warrants from the police. It seems as if the more questionable, the less constitutional the warrant is, the more likely she is to sign it. So they got their little machine going down there where you got a whole bunch of inbreds who basically pass the paperwork from one person to the next, and everybody's going to do exactly what it is that they know that they're going to do so white supremacy can continue apace. But family, I don't want us necessarily patting ourselves on the back. I'm not sure if I would say that this is a moment for celebration, but it's certainly white supremacy having taken a big L. And the reason why is, for the last 50 plus years, the white media, working hand in hand with the enforcement arm of white supremacy, has bludgeoned the public over the head, programmed the public that, hey, we got laws in the books saying that if the police accuse you of taking a shot at them, or if you're ever accused of harming a police officer for any reason whatsoever, that's first-degree murder. It's on the books in all 50 states. You're going down and it's guaranteed. That's automatic. That's automatic. It's guaranteed. Oh, they say that you harmed a police officer. Well, what about the circumstances? Well, circumstances be damned. It doesn't matter if Michael Slager shoots you in the back 8 times. You have no right to defend yourself. It doesn't matter if the Louisville Death Squad bashes in your front door, doesn't announce themselves, murders your woman right in front of you. You have no right to defend yourself. It doesn't matter what the hell they do. You have no right to defend yourself. And if you try to, they'll say that you're resisting arrest, or they'll say you assaulted an officer, or they'll say, well, in this state, you can't protect yourself from a white supremacist with a gun, especially if he's got a badge, and that's first-degree murder if you try. They've had the public relentlessly programmed with that. Your right to self-defense ends the moment that a white supremacist gets a badge. And what's happened is, with the Kenneth Walker case, we now see that the white supremacists are realizing that this license to kill that they thought they had given themselves has just been revoked. Or at the very least, it's been seriously curtailed. You see, this is the reason why the charges had to be stalled. And I don't think that they're gone. I think they're just being temporarily stalled. The reason why is you had the police realizing they don't have any sort of public support. Oh, the white media's tried to gin something up to get something going. Let's smear the victims. Let's see if we can use innuendo. Let's see if we don't have any criminal charges, nothing in their past as far as criminal record goes. But what we're going to say is, well, what about their work history? And what was Kenneth Walker doing at her place at that time of night? That's what they tried, and it didn't work. They were pulling out all the stops, every pathetic, desperate stunt that they could, and none of it stuck. None of it could get any traction. They couldn't make it happen. And so the enforcement arm of white supremacy is going, well, it's our practice. You know this nigger has to go down for this. Why, he shot at a police officer, and that's first degree. And Judge Olu Stevens, who, by the way, is the other hero in all of this, the Honorable Judge Olu Stevens, he did exactly what he's supposed to do. He interpreted the law correctly. He realized what everyone else realizes: no crime happened here. And looking at Kenneth Walker, this man's a law-abiding citizen, unlike the thugs in blue who bashed in Breonna Taylor's door and murdered her. So Judge Olu Stevens looked and said, this man has no criminal record. He's certainly no flight risk. Law-abiding citizen, decent person, unlike the Louisville thugs in blue. Well, this guy's clearly no threat to the public. He was no threat to the police. Unlike the police who were a threat to the public in that town, especially the black citizens. This man, it's okay for him to be at home pending trial, and we'll sort it out in the courtroom. And the white supremacists knew right then and there that's a problem. They do not want any bricks taken away from that wall. Remember, white supremacy has made a number of guarantees to its beneficiaries. Haven't I told you that for the longest time? White supremacy is held together through a system of goodies, giveaways, and guarantees. And because of the fact that white supremacy is a lie, you have to make sure that you remind them every day in every way that their guarantees are still intact. That's why the white supremacists are so ultra hypersensitive to any little thing that seems like it could be an encroachment upon or a threat to their guarantees. As black folks, we're used to an environment where there's no guarantees whatsoever other than white supremacy is going to keep attacking us. That's the only guarantee we have. But the white supremacists, they're reluctant to ever say it, but they know it and they live it out every day. They are completely and thoroughly reliant and dependent on white supremacy for every crumb of their daily bread. They are reliant and dependent on white supremacy to be there every day, and they require a constant reminder that white supremacy is still in place and that its position to hand them every crumb of their daily bread has not been diminished. There's 1,000 little processes that white supremacy carries out every single day, many of which the black people are unaware of, but the white supremacists are aware of them. They have to be. They are completely and thoroughly aware that whenever they accuse a black person of something, something's supposed to happen to that black person. A machine is supposed to swing into action and is supposed to grind that black person to dust, and there should be nothing that black person can do about it. It's supposed to be a guaranteed process because this is part of the glue that holds white supremacy together, that system of guarantees. And nowhere is this expression of guaranteed outcome supposed to be sharper than when it comes to the enforcement arm of white supremacy. If they can't get it done, then no one can. Well, the thugs in blue couldn't get it done this time. What happened was you had black folks on code. Judge Olu Stevens was on code. The Walker family was on code. At least they didn't get Mushmouth Crump or Sleaze Merritt. They went and got an actual attorney. And what a surprise! Achieved results. And you got Crump out there. He's trying to give a statement for the white media. And this idiot's acting as if he somehow had something to do with this temporary dismissal of the charges against Kenneth Walker. And you know Mushmouth's got to get out there because he knows that everybody's looking and going, look what happened when the family of the deceased, or at least in this case, the family of the accused, didn't have Sleaze or Mushmouth as their representative. Stop the thugs in blue cold. And Mushmouth saw that and he's like, I've got to get out in front of this. People gonna be looking and seeing me for the failure I am. They're gonna recognize me as a tool of white supremacy. So I better get out in front of this. I may not submit Kenneth Walker's attorney, but I'ma sure talk like I was. And that's what he's done. At least he's trying to anyway. Oh, he's sitting here saying that the charges being dismissed against Kenneth Walker is a victory. Yes, it is a victory. And yes, there were results because he had nothing to do with it. And people are looking and realizing that, and he's scared of that because he knows everyone's looking and going, look what happens when Crump and Sleaze are not part of the proceedings. Black folks get what it was that we want. And of course, I'm sure you noticed that in Crump's wind-blown, hot air, bloviating statement, just his empty gas bag of nothing, he didn't have anything to say in terms of gender warring this time. Yeah, he's not trying the gender divide on this one. Talking about Kenneth Taylor, he's not asking, well, why are we worrying about him? Everybody already focused on all these other black men, mostly ones that I represented. We should be focusing on Breonna Taylor. Yeah, he wasn't doing any of that garbage. Because he already knows, okay, gotta pick and choose when I try to undermine black people who are being dragged through the white supremacist and justice system. That's what he was trying to do with Kenneth Walker. He was trying to find a way to undermine Kenneth Walker, but try to do it in a way where he could say, well, I wasn't trying to undermine him. I was just trying to represent my client. Well, Breonna Taylor's not his client. She's killed. She's not a client. Her family is, but not her. And he understands that by deliberately trying to figure out how to divide the black community along lines of gender so as to say, oh, these black men, they getting all kinds of attention they shouldn't get, which is what he was trying to say. He understood that could help to fracture support for Kenneth Walker. That could help to fracture the black community. We'd be sitting here bickering about gender this, gender that, because there's a lot of black people who are childish, a lot of black people who are immature and foolish. And all you have to do is bring up some childish, immature nonsense, and a lot of black folks will go for it. And what happens is, while we're busy bickering with each other, we're not fighting white supremacy. We're not sticking up for each other, which is what Mushmouth was trying to do. So since that failed, he decided, well, let me see if I can find a way to jump out in front of the camera. The family of Kenneth Walker did what they were supposed to do. They got the right result without him. We got the result that we wanted. Oh, you got the local death squad's so-called union. Imagine that. A bunch of killers have a union. Imagine that. And they're sitting here fuming, mad as hell. We don't like any of this. We don't like. Yes, exactly. Because if the guys with guns are not able to inflict their will on the public, that means none of the other institutions or apparatuses or operatives of white supremacy can either. They're looking at the end of their power. If black people stay on code and if black people are relentless. This matter with Kenneth Walker is far from over. The DA's already made it clear. He's already made it clear. As soon as the cameras go away, he's going to refile charges. As soon as the cameras go away. Because as far as he's concerned, okay, too much heat. Too many people looking. Too much attention on this case. All right, we'll just wait a little while, let the cameras go away. And then next thing you know, all right, nigger, we're trying it again. And this time, there's not going to be anyone watching us, so we think we can get away with it. That's what they're going to be trying to do. And before I go any farther, since it's on my mind, I was looking at the comments to the community portion of my YouTube channel and on my Twitter page. You got some people who actually at this late date, they're trying the old, when it comes to Judge Stevens, what is we supposed to do? Can you imagine that? Every time, as I've told you, every time you got some black person who's coming up to us going, what we supposed to do? That's a black person who knows exactly what they're supposed to do, but they desperately hope to talk their way out of it. I have no patience for turncoat, backstabbing, worthless Negroes like that. I got no patience for them. When it comes to Olu Stevens, you know exactly what the hell you're supposed to do. And I want for black men in particular to understand you cannot command or otherwise expect the respect of black women if you're the one leading the charge with that "what was we supposed to do" talk. A black man's supposed to be decisive. He's supposed to already know, not be sitting here acting helpless. But I know we got a whole bunch of undercover operatives for white supremacy and a bunch of Negroes desperately hoping to get out of doing the hard work that power demands. So I'm disgusted by it, but not surprised. But understand, when it comes to Olu Stevens, the white supremacists in blue down there, they're already targeting this man. Not just targeting him politically because he's in an elected post. The local Louisville Death Squad Union has already made it very clear that they intend to target him in his next election. They've already made it very clear that they're going to float whatever money they can to anyone who can get him out of office. That's what they're trying to do. They're targeting this man. It's like, this guy is actually fighting for justice. He's actually instituting justice. White supremacy is being stopped cold because of Olu Stevens. And that's part of the thing that we have to be on board with. We got to put our muscle and our money behind the black folks who are doing things right. See, black people already know that, but what they're hoping is the Professor Truth will say, oh, well, with Olu Stevens, well, what we can do is we can say some prayers for him. And, well, maybe we'll do a couple of video essays or something. No, I'm telling you about is you're going to have to do physical work. You have to put in some physical work and some physical resources in order to safeguard one of these guardians of true justice. And a lot of black folks are terrified of that. They're terrified. They don't mind if you sit there and say, retweet something on Twitter. They don't mind that because that doesn't require them to do anything. And many of them won't even do that much. They can't be bothered to move a finger, literally. But when you start talking about actually doing some work, getting off your butt and actually putting some skin in the game, then all of a sudden they start playing dumb. See, that's white supremacy 101. That's how you know you're dealing with a Negro who's been co-opted by white supremacy. As Neely Fuller said, the white supremacists like to play dumb, and a lot of black people play dumb right along with them. Well, a bunch of Negroes who basically have given up to white supremacy and are trying to figure out some cowardly way that they can slither away from having to fight white supremacy, slither away from having to support black empowerment. These Negroes, they also play dumb because they see the white supremacists do it. They play like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Nah, sucker, that's exactly the problem. You know exactly what you're supposed to do, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and wait until the Louisville PD or whatever death squad's operating in your area gets around to you, and we will not be supporting any sort of action on your behalf. Black people who cannot be bothered to stand up for those who stand up for us, these are Negroes who, as far as I'm concerned, they voted themselves out of the gene pool and they will not be missed. Negroes who decide that fighting white supremacy is somebody else's job. Well, in that case, then apparently in your case, survival is someone else's job. Someone else will be doing the surviving because you won't. That's apparently what some of these Negroes have opted for. Well, we haven't. Kenneth Walker is a hero. And I can tell that some of the things we've been saying have been making it to some of these bootlick Negroes who in these cities who previously couldn't be counted on to actually say anything that even sounded like it was on the side of black empowerment. Now you got some of these mealy-mouthed black politicians trying to use our verbiage. You had one member of the city council in Louisville. She called Kenneth Walker a hero. And then she immediately said that one of the cops who murdered Breonna Taylor, that he just was doing his job. So, you can't have no fork-tongued Negroes like that. We can't be having all of that. You cannot in one breath praise the man who defended this woman even after she was dead and then somehow decide to praise her killers as well. That doesn't work. But this is the kind of forked-tongued, two-faced rhetoric that you get from these black politicians because most of them were put there by white power. Kenneth Walker is exactly where he should be today. He is at home. Now, he should not be grieving the loss of his loved one, but the problem happens to be when white supremacy strikes, it comes without warning. At least he was partially ready. But more importantly than that, what happened here was a huge L for white supremacy because they need the public to be on board with the white supremacist practice that if a black person tries to defend himself from being murdered by some race soldiers, well, we don't care. You're going to prison. Why? Because we said so. Judge Olu Stevens did exactly what he was supposed to do. You don't put a man in prison simply because he's been accused of self-defense. He shouldn't even been charged. And then the black grassroots got behind it and pushed this and pushed this and pushed this. And the bad guys, starting with that corrupt DA there, he saw exactly what was happening. He realized, uh-oh, I try anything now, hell, I might as well go ahead and pat Kenneth Walker on the back and tell him, be about your way, sir. Ain't no way in hell we can win a trial. We gotta stack the deck. So we gotta give this some more time. Let the cameras go away. Let's also work on making sure that we put our heads together with the clerk of court and the other powers that be, and we're going to make sure that we got a jury that looks the way it's supposed to. Hell, we'll refile charges, and who knows, hopefully, maybe we can maneuver things and try to get another judge other than Olu Stevens. See if we can find some other judge other than him, because we know how he feels about all white juries. That's what they think they're going to do. Now, I've already said that simply as a thought exercise, this is not something that I necessarily am dedicated to, but given all of the leverage that Kenneth Walker and his family have been able to amass for him, given the fact that they've made a number of right moves under the circumstances, it would be interesting to see the white supremacists decide, let's take this guy to court, because the thing is they would not win. And what they would do is they would show the entire country, indeed show the entire world, an example of a black man being accused by the thugs in blue of having harmed one of them. And oh, you know what that means, automatic life sentence. And then a jury says, no, this was self-defense. They do not want to set that precedent. They're terrified of setting that precedent because they have seen what's happened nationwide, that every defeat has fueled the next defeat. Michael Slager's conviction led to Jason Van Dyke's conviction. Jason Van Dyke's conviction led to Amber Geiger's conviction. What they're terrified of is, yeah, these sentences are going to get longer. Yo, these judges who have been sitting here supporting you, the black media is pointing the finger at them and saying, these judges, they're part of the problem. Yeah, we're going to take apart the entire scaffolding, the entire support network that has been protecting these guys and trying to give some sort of framework to their white supremacist practices. Oh, we hand off the dirty work from one person to the next like an assembly line. Well, we're busting up that assembly line. We're removing the operatives from that assembly line. And once that's the case, you won't have a white supremacist anything in law enforcement. What you'll have is justice, which is precisely what they are attempting to stop. Now, whether or not they are successful will depend entirely on us. This is why I've always told you I'm far more interested in what it is that black people are doing than in what the white supremacists are doing. We know what the white supremacists are going to do. But there is nothing so great that the white supremacists are doing that a united group of black people on code cannot stop. See, there's a whole bunch of black folks, they're kind of bothered as much as the white supremacists in blue are bothered by Kenneth Walker and these developments. They're bothered. And the reason why is, well, for them, we took time away from them watching reruns on Netflix. Ain't no sports on right now, but they're watching reruns on ESPN or something. And what they're terrified of is that black empowerment is going to require them to take more time away from entertainment and goofing off and more time toward doing this work. And they're trying to find some way to get out of that. They're trying to find some way to slither away from it. Hey, for those black people who don't want to be part of black empowerment, that's fine. You don't have to ask my permission or try to do some face-saving anything. You were never with this to begin with, so you won't be missed. Consider this your official get the hell out of my face moment. You want somebody to give you permission to get the hell out? Hell, I don't know what the hell you were doing here to begin with. I'm offended that you were here. I only want the doers around me. I don't want any of the folks who basically, they don't really have a problem with white supremacy per se. They just kind of get their noses bent out of joint a little bit. They find some of white supremacy's more egregious acts of violence to be a little bit mildly upsetting. Oh, if only those white supremacists wouldn't cut up quite so much. I was telling you guys a few weeks back that when it comes to a black legal defense fund, it was precisely an instance like Kenneth Walker that I said we were waiting for. This is precisely the kind of incident that a black legal defense fund and the precedent that it would set would do the most good. That's what you got to do. You wait to see, wait a minute, we need a case that would be precedent setting, one that would emblazon itself into the mass consciousness of black people in this country. And if I may use a sports analogy, something that would move the goalpost, something big, something noisy, something that could not be ignored. I'm not going to say this is a game changer. It's not a game changer per se, But what this does happen to do is this happens to be a crack in the wall. We haven't busted the floodgates open yet, but I told you that's the whole point of a black legal defense fund, because the police are always accusing black people. Anytime a black person defends themselves, nigger, you're going to go to prison for life. This thug with a badge was shooting at me when he saw my hands were up. I had to defend myself. Well, nah, nigger, the fact that you defended yourself, that was the crime. The crime was you defended yourself. So what, we supposed to just let this guy kill me? Yep, that's right. That's what they've been depending on. They've had a white media, including YouTube and Twitter and other places, that would back them up on it, but the public does not. See, these white corporations, they depend on white supremacy more than anyone. You cannot have corporations that are allowed to steal massive amounts of wealth, allowed to write laws. They literally write the tax code to favor themselves and to exclude any sort of benefits for anyone else. And the only way that that can happen is, the only way you can hold a system this evil, venal, and corrupt and unjust in place is you have to have a dedicated group of individuals with guns. White supremacy is completely and thoroughly reliant on the guaranteed use of violent force against anyone who disagrees with it. If they say we're putting you in prison, well, you better just come quietly, because if not, they'll be sending more men with guns and they'll be bringing military equipment with them just to make sure. If they tell you we're taking your house, it doesn't matter what you say. They'll be sending men with guns to make sure you're removed, if not killed outright. And if they say, well, we're going to search your premises and we've decided to go ahead and kill your woman, well, you better just sit there and do nothing about it, because they got guys with guns. That's what white supremacy depends on. It depends on violent force. Its so-called judiciary is backed up by that. It damn sure ain't backed up by these geriatric, many of them got so many health conditions it ain't even funny. These scumbags on the bench, they're not the ones who put any sort of force behind white supremacy's edicts and rules. It's the enforcement arm of white supremacy that does, men with guns. And that being the case, if you're going to call yourself defying white supremacy, the question is, what are you going to do when white supremacy sends its guns? A mental block had to be put in place in the minds of the public. And the mental block was, if they roll up on you, pull their guns and start shooting at you, you better not do anything to defend yourself. You just better pray that they don't come after you tomorrow. You just better keep your head down and hope it isn't you tomorrow. And now you've had an instance where a black man was accused falsely of doing something against law enforcement. And what happened is the police now have to see him walking the streets as a free man. They have to see that, and they're also looking to go in the public seeing that too. We can't have any bricks taken away from that wall. We cannot have that at all. People are supposed to understand that when the police start shooting at you, you can't do anything about that. You can't do anything about that at all. If the police decide they want to beat you in the streets, you can't do anything about that. If they decide that they're going to rape you on the side of the road, you can't do anything about that. You just can't do anything at all. It's just the way it is. No, people have the right to defend themselves no matter who it is who's trying to harm them. You know what you call that? You call that justice. And that's exactly what Kenneth Walker did. That's exactly what the Honorable Judge Olu Stevens did. Oh yeah, a whole lot of folks don't like what happened with Kenneth Walker. Mushmouth Crump, he knows that everybody's looking at that and going, yeah, you didn't have nothing to do with that. And look what the family got. They got justice, and it didn't even make it to trial. And he's like, well, I'm in favor of this too. I'm fine with this too. No, he ain't. He's seething. He understands that this is just yet another example of how irrelevant he is. He understands that when people are looking and going, yeah, we get results when you clowns, when Sleaze and Crump are not involved. People are looking at that and going, yeah, this is how you get results. White supremacy's controlled opposition tools being broken day by day. And it's the grassroots, the black grassroots, leading the charge. Now, for any of the people out there who might be a little slow on the uptake, where do we go from here? We stay the course. We maintain. The most important thing is that we are persistent. There are a number of black people who white supremacy has hemmed up, and trying to push the idea that if you're black, you just better pray that this race soldier doesn't decide to blow your brains out and you better not even attempt to defend yourself. There are a lot of black people who they've been doing that too. Kenneth Walker's just the one that we heard about. Black Legal Defense Fund to make sure that your right to self-defense is guaranteed and you have protection in law, because you know the DA is going to be trying to throw phony charges at you. And Judge Olu Stevens, he's pretty much the only judge that I can think of who actually looks at black defendants and actually gives rulings based on the law and not based on we must uphold the ideals and principles, such as they are, of white supremacy. So that being the case, unless you happen to be in Louisville, and unless it's a certain day when Judge Stevens catches the case, well, that's just going to be a wrap for you. It should not be that way. That is not justice. But there will be and can be no justice other than what we fight for and what we establish. We know what justice is, but justice doesn't just sprout out of the ground simply because you want it. It is something you have to do. It is something you have to make to exist, and then you got to maintain it and perpetuate it. Because there will always be the corrupt, the sick, the evil, the sniveling, the cowardly. There will be those actively trying to destroy justice and those who sit on their hands or otherwise don't do anything to maintain and preserve it. So on the one hand, you'll have the white supremacists who are trying every trick in the book to tear down justice, and you'll have the black bootlicks and the cowards pretending like they don't know what to do. That group, I lump them in with the crumps and the sleazes. If you're one of these Negroes going, well, what is we supposed to do? Okay, thank you. You clearly, your gene pool has more to do with sleaze merit than it does with me, so you can stand over there with them. Negroes who try to act helpless at an hour like this, you're no different than the other bootlick. You're one of them. You can go ahead and pat yourself on the back. You have bootlick status. But bootlick status has no place around B1. Now, I would be remiss if I did not bring up Breonna Taylor's civil case. And of course, the killers who murdered her, what's supposed to be done with them. As far as the civil case goes, as long as the family has decided to be so irresponsible as to retain the disservices of Mushmouth Crump, well, a civil judgment wouldn't do Breonna Taylor personally any good. She's been murdered. And if the family is sitting here basically trying to soft shoe and tiptoe around the issue, and as far as they're concerned, we really don't want to say anything too inflammatory, that's all right. If you decide that you're going to give weak mention to white supremacy, you're going to give weak mention to the truth of what murdered Breonna Taylor, then I will give weak support. I will not be out here giving any more support than the family does, just like with the Ahmaud Arbery case. You haven't seen me going ham about that one. Now, you guys saw me go ham about the Kenneth Walker case because of the precedent that it has now set. But as far as Ahmaud Arbery's case goes, if the family figures to themselves that they're going to go ahead and give a blink and you'll miss it mention of lynching and say, well, I would like to see them get the death penalty. You say that one time and then after that, okay, well, there I said it. Now you can't say that I didn't say it. There I said it. No, we don't play the cover your butt game here. You don't get to just give a blink and you'll miss it mention and then you go hide in the shadows again. And after that, see, I did my job. It don't work like that. You got to be out there every day banging the doggone drum. Now, you can say what you want about Fred Goldman. God knows I do. But the one thing you got to give Fred Goldman credit for was he was out there every freaking day. Sure, he didn't actually. We know it was overblown with him and his son. His son, Ron Goldman, had been estranged from his father for years. And we all know that basically, I guess Fred Goldman was feeling some kind of way that his son was dead. And he was looking for somebody to blame it on. And here we go. But the thing about it is, right or wrong, and Fred Goldman was surely wrong, at least on the facts of who killed his son. He was damn sure wrong on that. But nonetheless, he was out there every day, banging the drum every day. He did not want anyone to forget what he erroneously conned himself into believing, and he wanted everyone else to believe it too. This is the level of persistence and the level of effort that's going to be required. These families cannot be sitting back thinking to themselves, well, I'll let sleaze merit do all the talking. First of all, you ain't supposed to be sitting back letting the attorney do all the talking. When it comes to something like this, you're supposed to be putting a face to it, saying this was our family member. She was murdered for this reason. That has power when the family members get out there and say, we're going to tell people exactly why this happened. We're going to tell them that the white media is trying to to sling mud on our relative's grave, we're not going to stand for that. The family should be leading the charge, telling people exactly what took the life of Breonna Taylor. White supremacy did. Racism did. That Louisville is a long-standing, festering toilet of anti-black violence and hatred. They should be the ones educating the public about that. But as it stands, no one is. And as long as they decide that they're going to play this game of, well, we don't want to be too forward about it. We don't want to make too much of a nuisance of ourselves. Okay, fine then. Don't make a nuisance of yourselves at all. And neither will I. Now, as far as the case of the race soldiers themselves, the death squad who murdered Breonna Taylor, that's a separate issue. Now, as far as they're concerned, I consider them being put in prison to be non-negotiable. Though that would be made significantly more feasible if the family made it a point to be letting the white media know, we're going to force you to talk about this whether you want to or not. Point out that Breonna Taylor had never harmed anyone in her life. At least two of her killers had. These guys, they were shooting people and abusing people and bludgeoning people, a whole 9 yards. Point out these guys are violent thugs. Breonna Taylor, pure as the wind-driven snow, wouldn't harm a flea. This woman had never harmed anyone in her life. Unlike her killers, these guys, all they did was harm people. Make sure that you paint a vivid, undeniable picture. Draw the contrast. Make it undeniable. Breonna Taylor, this was a kind, gentle soul, a woman who made it her business to help people. She was a healer of people. She was in the business of healing people. Meanwhile, her killers were in the business of killing people. Make sure people understand that. Because if you don't define clearly the difference between Breonna Taylor and her murders, the white media will draw a distinction. The distinction will be, well, Breonna Taylor, there was a drug house, there were drugs. Okay, maybe they didn't find any drugs, but the police thought that there were. And, why was it that Kenneth Walker was there that time of night? He didn't live there. Why wasn't he at his residence? Why was he at hers? What they'll do is they'll try to take any sort of flimsy fake innuendo that doesn't even mean anything, and they'll try to give it some sort of sinister connotation. We're going to give it a sinister shade. And what about her killers? Well, we won't say anything about them at all. We're not going to say anything about them. We never say anything about the thugs in blue. Even after they get convicted, nobody is talking about Amber Geiger and her numerous social media posts from her and her family that clearly show that these guys were a bunch of anti-black white supremacist zealots. Same thing with Jason Van Dyke. You had to have the black media who went ahead and educated you about that scumbag. So if the family of Breonna Taylor does not believe that it's their responsibility to stand up for her memory and to make sure that she gets justice, if they don't decide that they must take the lead on this, then the white media will take the lead. For the family to have some lawyer means very little. In fact, it means nothing at all when you got Sleaze Merritt or Mushmouth Crump representing you. The lawyer's supposed to be filing all kinds of amicus briefs. That means friend of the court briefs. Okay, maybe we're not involved in this court case, but the court needs to think about this and think about that. They're supposed to be doing everything that they can to influence the outcome of any sort of trial. They're supposed to be doing everything that they can to make it clear. If this DA, the longer that he refuses to file charges, we need a new DA. We need a new DA, need a new police chief. Every day that these animals who murdered her walk the streets is a day that Breonna Taylor's memory is being trampled. They need to make it very clear that these guys should have already been arrested. They need to be using what attention they have for the media as a platform to clean house. But they're not doing anything at all, and their silence speaks volumes. As we all know, you know when people are actually opposed to something because they speak out about it. When people speak up, that's how you know that they're opposed to something. On the other hand, if people are not really bothered by something, if they're more or less in agreement with it, they just don't say anything at all. And this is exactly the impression that the Taylor family is giving. They're giving the impression that they really don't have a problem with the DA and really don't have a problem with the police chief. And hell, they really don't have a problem with Breonna Taylor's killers per se. Because they're not going ham about it. They're not making it very clear. They're not raising holy hell about it. And if the family's not raising hell about it, if they're not putting names on it, if they are not actively getting in front of everybody's face who will listen and a few who don't want to listen and making it where we're not going away until her killers go away for life. If they do not do that, then how the hell can they expect anybody else to get too worked up? They should be the main ones who are the most exercised and the most passionate about it. Instead, well, they've done some Twitter tweets and they've stood around with some people in front of the city hall, and that does have value to have people demonstrating, but a demonstration without a focus for action is useless. You just have some people standing around. So when it comes to Breonna Taylor, she is not being served as well as she should be, not by the misrepresentation of Mushmouth Crump, and by her family, she's not being served as well as she should be. She deserves a more aggressive, a more passionate defense from the people who knew her best. So when it comes to Breonna Taylor, if I sound like I'm a tad down about it, that's because I am. It's a matter of, it's obvious what should be happening. It's obvious what should be done. I have nothing to say really regarding Breonna Taylor family's civil suit, because this is mostly about them. That civil suit's about them. Breonna Taylor ain't going to get a dime. She's been murdered. There's nothing that money can do for her at this point. And since the family thinks that it's okay that Mushmouth Crump gets sliced off a piece of whatever money that they hope to get from the city or whomever, I'm looking and going, why the hell would I want to give Mushmouth Crump even one thin dime? This scumbag, I wouldn't let this bastard clean the grease trap at the Waffle House. What the hell are you doing giving this guy a platform? Mistake after mistake here. Sorry, but too many mistakes pile up and I got to go on, just too much. Sorry, I got to leave this one alone. But as far as any criminal proceedings go against the murderers who took Breonna Taylor's life, unfortunately, getting a full head of steam about it is difficult because of the fact that the family's not pulling their part of the load. They're not doing their part. Now, it's one thing if you got the family of Kenneth Walker who actually did what they were supposed to do, not as aggressively as I would have liked, not as openly as I would have liked. But again, I told you that I was making an exception in the case of Kenneth Walker because of the Black Legal Defense Fund and the precedent that this would set. I told you this was important. The same way the white supremacists recognized that the murder of Trayvon Martin could be just a seminal event. This could be a watershed event. They could use this as a stepping stone to policies that they wanted to do to injure black people. The case against Kenneth Walker, once it crumbled and fell apart, it could also be used as a stepping stone to a greater defense for black people. The white supremacists took a big L with that Kenneth Walker case, took a huge one. And they also, the way that they're raging and mad about it, it's a matter of, who you going to who are you going to whine and complain to, huh? The union of scumbags that they got in Louisville, who in the world are they going to complain to? Oh, you're going to go to the public? Yeah, I'm sure the public can't wait to see a man who defends his woman and her household, to see him go to prison. I'm sure the people can't wait to see that. You got caught with a no-knock warrant. Now you're trying to change your story and say, well, we had a knock and announce warrant. No, you didn't. We got the documentation. We got the receipts. Well, it could go either way. It's a matter of interpretation. No. What they wanted was to see if they could railroad Kenneth Walker. They want to change the conversation. Don't worry about the dead black woman who we killed. It's all about this black guy over here. This is all his fault. How is it his fault? Well, if this black guy hadn't been there, it wouldn't have happened. You're the ones who opened fire. Well, we say that he did. Nah, you don't get to pull that one. You don't get to pull that. Won't wash. They had to back down. The good guys didn't. And not only did they have to back down, they had to back down on one of the main things, one of the main public policy pillars that they have in place that is supposed to make it where the public does not question the enforcement arm of white supremacy's ability to kill. One of the main things that they need in order to make it where you hesitate when the white supremacists are shooting at you and trying to kill you. If the white supremacists have you in a situation where they're about to try to take your life, they want to make sure that you hesitate. Well, you better not do anything. So what do you choose? Do you choose to get killed or do you choose to be in prison for life? Because it's going to be one or the other. That game is now beginning to fall apart. And no matter what the mushmouth crumps or the sleaze merits try to do to jump out in front of the cameras and pretend as if, well, this had something to do with me's. No, we see exactly what happened here. All these white supremacist operatives and their ploys are being exposed. But family, this is only the first step. This is not even first phase. This is just a first step. I told you about that. Now, what I gave you was a far less optimistic guideline for it. I said that it would not be successful the first time, wouldn't be successful the fifth or sixth time, might be successful the ninth or 10th time. It would be successful the 12th or 13th time. Now, I was trying to mentally prepare you for the fact that it was going to take a number of failures to get to those successes, just like with getting these police regularly incarcerated. But what happened was with the Kenneth Walker case, I looked at this and said, we could probably step that timetable up a little bit, but I don't want you to think this is going to be the norm. Do not expect that every effort in order to preserve and to promote Black people's right to self-defense from white supremacist killers behind badges. Do not think that the Kenneth Walker case is going to be just standard operating procedure. It's a first step, an encouraging first step, but a first step nonetheless.